I know you're gonna dig this.
This is Rhine McLin, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles, recorded live here at DATV Studios in Dayton, Ohio. And now, Skyping all the way from Los Angeles, California, Reggie Calloway, singer, songwriter, and producer. Hello, Reggie.
How's it going, Mayor Ryan?
It's going great. I am just so excited to be talking to you today. And let's start off. I mean, you've done so much, but you're one of the things that you were one of the founding members for Midnight Star. So let's start there and work me through how you got interested in music, where you originally from here in Ohio, I know, and just walk me through what you've done. Our audience really want to know all about Reggie Calloway.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. And yeah, before it's over, we're going to touch on everything, but briefly, I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, which I'm very proud of. My family from Louisville, Kentucky, grandparents, parents. We moved from Louisville to Cincinnati when I was going to the 4th grade, and that's when I really got turned on to music, because at my elementary school, I had a choir, had a violin, small orchestra, some instruments, and it was just eye-opening. It was kind of like going to college in the 4th grade, and that led to the talent shows and the small bands that we put together coming up. But you're right, they all accumulated when I went back to Kentucky State University and formed Midnight Star, and met all the rest of the guys and Belinda and the team, and the rest became history.
So, you're most times we really want to know about how did you really get interested in music, and I noticed that your father played trumpet, your aunt sang opera, and you had an uncle who played keyboard. So you came up in a musical household, as well as your grandmother playing piano. So how did that influence you as a teen?
Yeah, it wasn't, it's sort of a thing that's really in your DNA, and it goes beyond your influences. Definitely nourish it, but we all see life from a different perspective. So for myself and my brothers, it was contagious, and music was around. My mother loved music and sang in the church choir. So she'd be looking down at us from the choir stand, making sure we were behaving. For me, as a young kid, I'm listening to the choir. I'm trying to figure out the harmonies and the notes. A natural kid might just be throwing pencils around, but I'm really trying to break the music down. So that just went on for a time, as well as my grandparents' house was right next to a church. And I mean, like literally next door, and the music that was coming out of that church was so incredible. The organ, the tamarines, the shouting, the energy. So with those experiences, I began to always search out, where's the music? Where's the music? So just when we were in the projects of Louisville, Kentucky, uh, our instruments were pots and pans and oatmeal boxes, and there was a piano class at the elementary school, but because there was only one piano, really we all had a little cardboard piece of paper with the keys on it, and that was not encouraging or motivating. I wanted to hear the music. So luckily, uh, both grandparents had a piano at the house that wasn't in tune or anything, so I could tell it was out of tune, at a very early age. But still, I could create my own little melodies and pick out things. So I kind of was always a songwriter in heart, because I wasn't really trying to learn other people's songs too much. I was still always trying to figure out how can I create something, what makes these notes work. So that kind of is born inside of you, and sort of a God's calling, and you recognize that, and you just go for it.
Now, while you were down at Kentucky State, what was your major?
My major was music. There's the background story to getting there. Um, I always wanted to play the guitar, hence my Fender guitar shirt. But we couldn't afford to get a guitar at the time, and so I kind of kept that love. But at going into junior high school, they had, of course, different bands and ensembles. So my mother said if I be in the band, that she'd get me an instrument, because she felt like, with that encouragement around, I wouldn't just start and stop and waste money. So then choosing an instrument, as I said, my father played trumpet, and he would often sit us on his lap at my grandparents' house, at his parents' house, and play for us. He had long really stopped playing seriously from high school, but just to get a sound out of the instrument, and to trumpet has the valve oil, that special smell of the case when you open it up, and those memories stick with you. So going into junior high school, I picked the trumpet as an instrument that I could play in the band. And so my mother got together with some family members, my cousin, and rented me a trumpet. Not buy one, just rent one. We're going to see what this boy is going to do, because instruments are so expensive, but yet relatively expensive. It just depends on your wherewithal to acquire one. But so then I began to play the trumpet, and the trumpet carried me all the way through high school, and I played in a couple of great bands in Cincinnati. The Motown Masters was my junior high school band, and MD Fire Department was my high school band that we toured across the country. I left school a little bit early to make this tour, which was quite exciting and quite revealing. By the time we got from Cincinnati, we landed in Las Vegas. And I said, oh, we made it now. We made it to the big time. We're in Vegas. When I woke up that morning, as we arrived in Vegas, I'm like, where are all the casinos? We're kind of in the residential side of Vegas. This reminds me a lot of just back home. I didn't know that there were I was seeing more just the big picture of all the lights. But here we are in the small nightclub, which was not that small, because this nightclub rocked with 2 live bands going from 8 o'clock at night to 4 or 5 in the morning. So that was the gig there. And after doing that for a month or so, it was time to go back to Cincinnati. And I said, also for me, it's time to go to college, because what I know about music is nothing compared to what I need to know to really rise above, and to not be stuck just in nightclubs, whether it's in Vegas or whether it's anywhere in the world. Want to get to the concert stage, want to record, want to write music, want to be heard on the radio. So that led me to go to audition for different colleges, and I was after being turned down by Indiana University, I was accepted at Kentucky State University with a scholarship for playing the trumpet to be in the marching band and the jazz ensembles and the different organizations that were there. So that was a critical turning point. And now be around students my age that also wanted to, become excellent in music and to strive. And that's what made Midnight Star work, is that we all had liked ideals and we were all shooting for pretty much the same thing, and that was to make it in music and to make a difference in the world.
So did your brothers follow you to Kentucky State, or how with the forming of Midnight Star, how did that really happen? Did it happen in a dorm? Did it happen in a classroom? How did that really come all together to end up with the name Midnight Star? And we know that you're one of the founding members. So I'd like to hear the story behind how Midnight Star came about.
You say, did my brothers follow me? The whole family followed me. that's literally. So after I went there, my brother Greg went to Bowling Green University in Ohio, and it became a little. My mother would have to try to visit both of us, going from Bowling Green to Kentucky State, too far to spread a distance. So Greg, my older brother, transferred to Kentucky State University. Greg was not a part of Midnight Star. Greg was later part of the management of Midnight Star. So Greg came there. Then my mother came to Kentucky State University and worked for the president of the university. So she actually had employment there, which was incredible. She loved to motivate, be around her sons, to inspire. So we were kind of all there. Then Greg and Vincent, who was also a founder of Midnight Star, we had a jazz group called Sunchild, and it was a contemporary jazz ensemble. We were based in Cincinnati, played a lot at the very famous Viking Lounge there. We even did a whole week with the famous, incredible Sonny Stitt, Grand Master of the saxophone, heir apparent of Coltrane and Charlie Parker. We did a whole week backing him up. So at the university, playing in the ensembles, the jazz ensemble, marching band, you get to know everybody, and you know who you click with and who you work with, and what everybody kind of does. So one of the first people that I came the closest with as far as creativity and creating and building was Bill Simmons. Bill also and I played in a group at Kentucky State called Funkified. That was our first group at Kentucky State. So when I left Cincinnati, I joined Funkified at Kentucky State, and what a great time we had, playing the college parties and all that. But every year, the group would break up because it would be summertime, and everybody would go home, and then we'd come back and do another section the next year. That became a problem because there was Funkified during the school year, then I'd go home and there'd be Sunchild, my jazz ensemble. But with Sunchild was incredible because that's when I began to compose and really use what I was learning in college to create our own music. And we made our first 45 about 1974 with the instrumental cuts of Mama's Groove and Betwixt the Humps, which people are trying to sample today. So that's really cool. But so I eventually asked Bill to join Sunchild, and Bill came to Cincinnati. He lived in Indianapolis, came to Cincinnati, over the summer and jammed with us. We had another whole level because Bill was super talented as well, played saxophone and keyboards. Everybody in Sunchild played multiple instruments, so it was like watching a circus go from trumpet to trombone to flute to piano, to sing. So that was a lot of fun, a lot of self-expression in an ensemble like that. But once again, every time school would come back, it would be time to break up and go back to school. And this particular time where we were at sort of a peak with Sunchild, about to go to New York and do a showcase and really get the party rolling, so to speak, two of the guys decided they wanted to quit. they had different directions that they wanted to go. So the group that kind of broke my spirit. I was like, wait a minute, I need to put together a band that's going to really go for it. Not get to the point where it's time to make the next step and then sort of lose it. So it has to be liked aspirations, common goals, and a common work ethic and spirit. So this particular year, I went back to Kentucky State, and I said to myself, I want to put together the greatest band in the world, people of like minds that can weather the storm. And going back to Kentucky State that particular fall, the first person I went to was Bill. I said, Bill, let's do this. I'm ready to do that. And Bill was like, let's go. So we already knew who the best players were, and it wasn't just that you were the best player. It was also that, like I said, you had to have a goal of a direction. Because in the early Midnight Star, in auditioning and trying people out, some people wanted to be super jazz musicians, or they may be just gospel. So with Midnight Star, you kind of had to be everything. So, and you definitely had to be funky. So the funk was the main thing. So a jazz drummer and a funk drummer can be two different things if they don't understand both worlds. So it was a little bit of carving out, but going through after Bill, then I picked Jeff Cooper, guitar from Indianapolis, Kenneth Gant, bass from Louisville, Kentucky. So now we pretty much had our rhythm section. Next was Belinda Lipscomb. I knew Belinda was incredible. Talked about somebody who does everything. Belinda would do the classical seminars at school and turn the place out singing classical. Then the next evening you would hear her at the gospel ensemble, and she would totally blow everybody away. And then I put on different talent shows at Kentucky State, like I've always done back in Ohio, and she'd come in and sing R&B and funk and just kill everybody. so as a vocalist, Belinda was just the dynamic person, and definitely wanted to be a star, wanted to make it, and had a work ethic. Because to be the only lady in an all-guy band, I wouldn't want to have that job. But she just wore it well and just hung in there and just did everything that she could do to make the group a success. Then also we rounded the group out with on the keyboard section, a couple of freshmen came in, and one was Bo Watson that year. I heard Bo play and sing, and I said, this guy's got something going on. Let's see if we can get Bo in the group. So I went to Bo and asked him to be in the group, and Bo said, yes, I'll be in the group. Then the next day, Bo came back and says, Reggie, I had to change my mind. I don't think I could be in the group. I'm like, why? He said, well, my homeboy was here, and we always thought we'd be in the group together. I said, well, what does he play? What's his name? His name is Melvin Gentry. He plays guitar and bass and drums and sings. I said, well, I think Melvin would be great for the group. If you like him, then we like him. Let's try him out. And that rounded out the first round of the group. Melvin replaced the one drummer who we were looking at, Rico Scott, who is another example of Rico really wanted to be a jazz fusion drummer. So just playing R&B funk, he was not dedicated to that particular genre at the time. He later went on to play drums for Cameo, so Larry Blackman definitely told him about the funk. So it all comes back around. But so Melvin began to play drums, and then later utilizing his guitar work and his singing work and coming out front. And we run. I left out Vincent. So my brother Vincent, we were getting ready to do our first demo, and the horn section at that time was just myself and Bill Simmons. And in order to get that big horn sound, you needed 3-part harmony as opposed to just a 2-part harmony. So my brother Vincent played trombone and trumpet, which made him an incredible weapon. He was still in high school, so it was like, Vincent, okay, it's your senior year of high school, but we need you now. So Vincent left high school, came to one of our gigs in Kentucky, watched us work, moved in, joined the band, learned the parts, and went into the studio and recorded our first demo, and went on to discover the vocoder and become the freakazoid master that we all know today, with no parking, freakazoid, operating electricity, all that good stuff. That's Vincent, my brother. So,
So how did you get the name? How did you come up with the name?
so the name, every band's got to have a name. So once we were, pretty well formed, that became, the next issue. So it's just the typical thing of, throwing out names and seeing what sticks and what doesn't stick. For us, it happened really quick. We were in the dorm. Yeah. Speaking of the dorm, that's where we rehearsed, in my dorm room. A whole band rehearsing in my dorm room. We called it telephone volume. We could rehearse so softly that no one could hear us in the next rooms unless we wanted to crank it up. So we didn't get thrown out too much, or neither did Belinda get in trouble for being in the men's dorm, because back in those days there were no co-ed dorms at Kentucky State. So it was so funny. But one of the evenings, we sat down, kind of sitting on the dorm bed, coming up with names, and Jeffrey Cooper, from guitar player from Indianapolis, Jeff came up with Star, and I said, that definitely describes it, but it feels incomplete. It's a little short. So then I came up with Midnight. So then Midnight Star, once we all heard it, it was like, there you go. And then we coined that with a phrase that I came up with that says, if you can look into the darkness and see the light, then you too can be a midnight star.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting story. I don't know how many people probably really know that story. And I'm so glad that you're sharing it with us. Now, let's move forward with your Midnight Star days. Tell me about your hits and your songs, and are you going to sing to me, or are you going to do a little medley for me for some of your songs from Midnight Star? Look at you blushing.
The rest of the world doesn't know that you called me at 8 o'clock in the morning in LA. So
they didn't have to know.
Then you asked me to sing. I find that. That reminds me of elementary school choir rehearsal. We had choir rehearsal at 8 o'clock in the morning, so we'd have to walk up about 2 or 3 miles to get to school, and cold or whatever, and then sing.
Okay. Well,
and then she said, never drink milk before you sing, because it'll make your voice clog up.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Too much dairy products will definitely give you, it'll activate the phlegm or whatever, and can change your sound a little bit.
Oh, I've learned something. But okay. Okay. And so your first 2 LPs for the label were Standing Together in 1981 and Victory in 1982, correct?
You left off the beginning.
Yes. Okay, then your third LP.
Yeah, it was called The Beginning.
Okay, and then your third LP, No Parking on the Dance Floor.
And right. That would have been the fourth LP, because you left out the beginning.
So okay, that was the Career Maker, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first album was The Beginning, then Standing Together, then Victory, and then we finally reached a national acclaim audience with No Parking on the Dance Floor. So a lot of people thought that was our first album, because they hadn't heard the others. But people in Ohio and Cincinnati and Dayton, they know the real deal. They know the hard work that went into it. So off those early albums, we were discovering ourselves and discovering how to get to the commercial market. It's one thing to make music. It's another thing to make people like the music. So we had to put that all together, because our backgrounds were, how can we be the best musicians, whether it was jazz or whether it was mixing in classical music, we were really into the sounds of intricacy, but yet funk. So that's why we admire people like Earth, Wind & Fire and stuff like that. So we wanted that great music sound that had roots in funk and R&B. So on the first album, first we had to get signed. So one of my Sunchild connections, after I told her that the group had broken up, she said, well, let me know when you have a group that's really ready to go. So this year was the time when Midnight with Star was formed, and we had done our first demo, and I told her that I think we're ready. And so she set up a showcase for us in New York, which was actually Palisades, New Jersey, across the river at the Soap Factory, a famous nightclub there. And that's where we had discovered there was some record industry people that showed up that Pian had put together, and they were very, very taken by the group and spread the word back to Los Angeles to Dick Griffey, president of Solar Records and founder. So Dick Griffey proceeded to come to Cincinnati, Ohio to see a showcase at Mr. Kelly's nightclub there in the middle of the afternoon. There was nobody there but him and us and the cleanup staff and maybe the manager of the club. After that showcase, Mr. Griffey said, "It feels like something is missing. I think I want to see you guys again." Well, the missing part was Bill had taken ill, so he was not playing his saxophone or singing his background notes. So Mr. Griffey heard, he said, I feel like there's a note missing. So we said, we didn't want to tell you before the show because we didn't want to make any excuses. He said, well, I'd love to see you again. And so the next time he saw us shortly thereafter was at an Air Force base in Las Vegas. I'm back in Las Vegas again, right? That's the first time I ever said that, the first time I ever thought about that. Here I am back in Las Vegas. Wow, where I thought I was going to make it the first time. Wow, I had to pause. That blows my mind. So we were at the Air Force base. Now, instead of it being an empty nightclub, this was a full hall of enthusiastic airmen and women, cheering on this new Midnight Star. So Dick Griffey came there with his then young daughter. She must have been about 4 to 6 years old. And of course, we did our job. We turned the place out. And so Mr. Griffey says, how would you guys like to sign to my little record label? And we were like, that sounds pretty good to us. We might make some music. So that led to the beginning album, the first album, signed with Solar. Mr. Griffey said he wanted to produce the album. We're like, what does a producer do? Still learning. And that's when we chose Harvey Mason, based upon his incredible studio work, and master studio drummer as well as jazz drummer. We thought he could give us that in-between sound that we wanted, the funk on one hand and the musicality of the other, which did happen because he also turned us on to some of the greatest musicians around the Los Angeles area that playing on a lot of these great records. So we used a lot of that education and contacts to grow what we were doing and learn more about sounds and what instruments are actually used to get these sounds and arrangements, and what an education that was. So on the beginning, there was no breakout hit. First single was called Make It Last. Then it was time to do the second album. That was Standing Together. At this point, we had met Leon Silvers, who produced Make It Last at the end of the beginning album, because Mr. Griffey wanted to make sure that we had something that was commercially acceptable, and thought that this young touch of Leon would be the magic. That, like I said, that song didn't chart as well as we all wanted, but this gave way to Leon doing the whole second album. So Standing Together, songs like Tough. And it's so funny, I have these albums around. But the funny thing happened at the end of the album, Leon had a book of his own called Dynasty. And Dynasty was to go to Africa to perform. So at the end of our album, when it was time to finish it off and mix and master, Leon goes to Africa. So Mr. Griffey puts me in charge of finishing the record. And from what I learned from Leon, what I learned from Harvey, I was in the producer's chair now, trying to figure this all out, and that paved the way to us producing the Victory album, us being Midnight Star and myself. So we did that album after doing the first two albums in LA. Now we're back in Ohio at Fifth Floor Studios, which is where all the great Ohio groups record, from Ohio Players to Roger and Zapp to Bootsy Collins to many, many others. So we're now back home getting it done. In fact, we would be there in the morning. Roger and Zapp would come in the evening, and the Ohio Players would be there all night long. So that was the rotation. So it was funk. It was funk by the gallons. And so Roger would stick his head in the studio while we were finishing up, because everybody's always running late. Just 15 more minutes. Yeah, Roger would say, "Y'all keep playing that pretty music." What Roger was really telling us was that was code for what y'all playing is not funky enough. You better get some more funk in there if you want to get paid. And we listened closely. It took a minute to sink in, but we definitely got what he was talking about. And then once our funk was totally on top, then Roger would try to copy what we were doing. So it was a beautiful time, and that's what it's all about, is being around strong spirits, and that's why the Ohio Valley is so funky, because you could be right next door and touch somebody great. Not to mention James Brown recording in Cincinnati, Ohio. Not to mention that James Brown came to my mother's grand opening for her flower shop and ice cream parlor. So when you have the master like that come by and just show his love to his sister, Gloria Larson, my mother, who was also co-manager of Midnight Star and The Deal, L.A. Reid, and Babyface, Sharp, and band out of Cincinnati. So all these connections just keep percolating and turning around. But all of that, that's 3 albums, that no breakout single. That's not just the music, but it's also the record label, the distribution, the radio promotion, all the things that go into making a hit record. They all have to come together, the marketing, the PR. So we were primed right now, because we had also just added Pablo Davis out of Columbus, Ohio, to our management team. And Pablo was a world-class concert promoter and been around music for a long time. In fact, talking about connections, Pablo used to book my young jazz groups at his college. He's also one of my fraternity brothers. So there was a connection with Pablo, and Pablo was instrumental in helping to focus that funk once again on the making of music, and continue to create a system to where 12 hours, 14 hours a day, we're doing music, getting it better and more sharp, more research, more street level, knowing what's going on. So all those focuses came all together into the No Parking on the Dance Floor album, which we knew by this time that no group has ever probably been on a label and had 3 albums out, and the label still hangs in there. In today's market, you couldn't even get signed, period, let alone have one album that didn't make it and still be on the label for the next album. So it's a credit to Mr. Griffey that hung in with us. Not only did he hang in there with us, but he was like, once again, this album, do it all yourself. Send me some of the songs, let me check them out. But you guys are going to record it in Cincinnati, and not a lot of interference or whatnot. Let's get it done. And that's what we did. We studied, went to the clubs, did research, found what people were listening to, had listening parties, and analyzed the music. The goal for No Parking on the Dance Floor album was to make every song on the record a hit. And we pretty much accomplished that goal. So that's really incredible to knock that out. But from the first single, Freakazoid, to Wet My Whistle, to No Parking on the Dance Floor, Slow Jam, Play Another Slow Jam, to Electricity, Playmates, it just went on and on, song after song, and that created a whole new wave of music, a whole new style. Techno funk was introduced to the world, by way of Freakazoid, and was well received. So at that point, now that was the real videos, it's the real tours. Uh, it seemed like life changed overnight, but everybody who really knows that it was, some 4 years later of Just Midnight Star, but it was a whole lifetime of preparation from all the different groups that we had been in coming up, and all the bands and all the songs and all the nightclubs and van and car rides, and it was everything that made that happen.
You mentioned your fraternity. What is your fraternity?
Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
Oh, okay. You're an Omega man.
Yes, I'm Psi Psi chapter at Kentucky State University.
Okay. I'm sure that's probably a lot of your brothers, when they see this, that they will be able to identify, and I would have been remiss if I had not asked you which fraternity that you belong to. So as we talk about the no parking on the dance floor, so you have all these hits going. How is the group responding to their success? They've taken all this time, they've prepared themselves, and voila, here we are successful. We have more concerts to do, and we got to promote the music. How did that impact the group as a whole?
It was very, very exciting. I think when you paid your dues, and then you want to enjoy it for a minute, but you gotta get back to what you have to do, and that can be the hard part, because everybody wants to take a break in your mind, but you got to get ready for the next album, and it's got to be better than the one you did before. So that's a challenge, but it's also it's more than you expect on one end, with the fans and adulation and all the cheering and the interviews and all that great stuff. And then on another end, you don't see as much change financially, because in 3 albums that didn't sell, you've created a lot of debt. So no one wants to take into account that. And when you're new on the touring scene, you're not making the top dollar. You're still moving from an opening act to a middle act, hoping to get to a headliner. So all those adjustments, so you have to be ready for them and take it in stride, because it can tear up a lot of groups. We survived the freshman into the hit realm, and went back in to do the next album. And after No Parking, there was Planetary Invasion. So that was exciting. It's like, okay, can we do it again? And the single Operator off that next album was one of our biggest charting singles. So the mission was accomplished. No Parking on the Dance Floor, and it was a double platinum album. The next 2 albums were platinum, which is a really great run. But you gotta always try to remember what you did to get yourself there, because when you alter that, then you take a chance on stepping back. So there's always a fight to innovate, but yet do the systems that you did in the first place. I'm moving this off my TV screen. Oh, it keeps them coming.
So when you were doing concerts with Midnight Star, tell me 3 places that you went that were highlights, and then tell me 3 things that might have been that where you had to make the show go on, but they were kind of like, ooh, this really happened to us? Did you travel Europe or what? Tell me three highlights and tell me three not so highlights.
Okay. Let's see. One of the highlights is actually two highlights, and that was when No Parking came out, and one or two of the singles topped the charts. Then we were invited to play the Cincinnati Jazz Festival, which has had many names since then. Cincinnati Music Festival, Ohio Valley Music Festival. Anyway, we all know from the area that's the biggest festival in the area, but it's also one of the biggest festivals in the world. And so the first year we did the festival, we were the opening act, which we were proud to do. But when you're the opening act at a festival like that, when you come out, it's still daylight. People are still coming in, still getting into their seats, and then you're expected to play while all this is going on, and which we did. And we ended the set with Freakazoid. By the time we got to Freakazoid, the place was a lot more full, and that was the greatest homecoming party ever, to be in your hometown and rocking 50,000 people with your own music. So that was incredible. The album was so big and had so many singles on it that the next year we were invited back again. This time we were in the sweet spot, the middle spot, to where the sun is setting, the lights are coming on, the crowd is juiced, ready to get the party rocking. And so by this time we were like legitimate stars, so to speak. We hit the stage and the place went bonanza. People rushed down onto the football field, which back in those days you weren't allowed to be on the field. I guess they figured we'd mess it up. But the crowd rushed down there, and by the time we hit Freakazoid this time, it was just hysteria. So that was incredible. A similar experience to that was playing the I get them mixed up, but the Superdome. Which one is in New Orleans? The Astrodome or the Superdome? Yeah, but playing there, once again, 50,000 people, big Megatron monitors, so you're on stage and you like look at the monitor. You might mess up if you see yourself on this big screen because it's facing towards the bandstand. But those were just so rewarding. Some of the hard, coming up. Once we were at Kentucky State, we survived and got our chops tight by performing wherever we could. And so all through Kentucky, through Ohio, through Indiana, we were doing nightclubs in Indiana. That this is the early stages. I mean, our dressing room was the kitchen, so if you could get a chair in there, that'd be all right. But and I mean, we actually had costumes, so we actually had to change. We might change costumes twice a night, and but our job was to put on the most incredible show that we possibly could. So if it meant changing the dress room, that's what we did. If we had to, travel from show. Oh, you looked that up? The Superdome? Okay.
Superdome's in New Orleans.
That's the one, the Superdome, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was incredible. So, so another, we played a city called Lynch, Kentucky, and down deep in Kentucky, and we were the only African Americans within shouting distance, and the fan base wanted to hear some rock and roll, and here we are, this R&B funk band, jazz band, and you want to give the people what they want. So if you're really a musician and you're versatile, that's not it's not a problem. So so we fired up some rock and roll. Melvin got out the drums and jumped on guitar, and we had a great time. So we turned a situation that we might not found to be the best situation, into a great situation. And
that's in Lynch, Kentucky.
It's in Lynch, Kentucky. I don't know where that name came from, but
we don't want to know. Go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like, get me out of here. Good thing we know rock and roll. Good thing we created rock and roll as far as African Americans. Just being humble enough to like I say, travel around the country with 12 people in one van, sleeping on the floors, and being humble enough to go in a restaurant and be chased out, but not not be bowed down or not be bloodied either, but to know that, hey, this may be this part of America, but this is not all of America. This is not all we stand for. So to survive that, it just makes you really look back at what our parents must have definitely had to endure, because it's still going on when we were coming up, and it still goes on today. So the fight for freedom and equality, it's a never-ending battle. But yet we have different weapons of today to achieve our goals. And for Midnight Star, for musicians, music is one of our greatest weapons.
So, if you were going to give advice to upcoming musicians or anybody who wants to get in the business, what 3 things would you say, after all your experiences, that you think that they really need to have to be successful?
Well, when you get ready to make that move, the first thing is to really check yourself, check your soul out, and see if you're really cut out for it. Is it a calling for you? Is it something that you're willing to sacrifice, pretty much all for? Are you going to stick to it, or is it just a hobby? And then you can just enjoy it as a hobby, and you can get out of it. So, but if your answer is yes, this is something I really, really want to do, then then from that step, then you begin to do everything that requires. After your commitment, the next is mastering your craft, whether you're a vocalist or instrumentalist, or even on the business side. You want to be studied, and you want to be rehearsed, and you want to be trialed and tested. So learning your craft means also getting out there and presenting it, performing, letting people hear your music. Don't live in a can. But the last thing is the business, studying the business to know how you can do it all yourself, from the marketing and promotion to how do you finance your own project. Be self-reliant. Don't think that someone's going to come along and make your dream come true. And today's market is even more example of that. Whereas in some ways it's easier to get your music out there because you have all the internet and all the different outlets and independent distribution companies, but it's always going to be a little bit more difficult to market and promote it, even though there's a lot of low cost to no cost internet promotion. Promotion is still an expensive endeavor that you have to be ready for. So aligning yourself with the right partners. And lastly, any agreement that you ever sign, make sure you have a music attorney reviewing that, not any other kind of attorney, because every contract is sort of related to the field. It's not like the old saying, if you have a heart attack, you don't want a brain surgeon working on your heart, and vice versa. You have to have a specialist to deal with what you're dealing with.
Finally, I would like to talk about why you believe that the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center is so important, and what would you think that should be done to move this Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center to another level? And what are you willing to do to help us?
Yeah, that's a lot of loaded questions.
Ah.
Well, I think it's very, very important for several reasons. One is that the world needs to know about this music and these creators, and to uplift that recognition and appreciation. It's got to come from inside the community to show the world what's been done. So, what a great spot, right in Dayton, Ohio, to spread out from, and others to recognize the region where so much of the music has come from. Then also to, part of this education is keeping these different legacies alive, but also, education on how the music is actually created, so that it can continue to flourish. If it's not taught, if it's not shared, then the appreciation doesn't have a chance to really grow. So that is major. The one of the first things I want to do is get more of Calloway Brothers and more Midnight Star memorabilia there for people to see, to know, how important that is to the region. That's on the artistic side. But on the business and creative side, I've made myself available to be on the board of directors, to use my influences to help grow, the organization, both financially and for the reach nationally and internationally. So I think that is a very important thing. In my later years here, I've really found a great appreciation. I've always done talent shows for the kids and seminars and songwriting seminars, and now, that's grown to even a larger position of trying to be an example, by being a member of NARAS, which is the Grammys, being a member of the songwriters, composers, lyricists, by promoting the Music Modernization Act, which is changing the rules for the way money is collected and for songwriters to be paid. So I'm involved firsthand with all these things. I'm on the board of directors of the California Copyright Conference, which represents publishing companies and attorneys and creatives to keep information going on and on. So all these different things, to bring them all together and to keep spreading things within our own community is incredibly important. Also,
excuse me, but the connection between Cincinnati and Dayton with funk music and all the things that you were talking about with the educational level, and that there are so many aspects to the music industry. And I think one of the key things that I really like to give David Webb credit for and pushing for the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center is documenting all of the folks that have contributed to funk music that people may never know. And because we do the Funk Chronicles, that is going to be immortalized for them. And I think that is so important for the next generations to come around, to at least have a place to go to recognize what the funk era was. And it's still coming back. It hasn't gone away. I mean, you have a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you have the country music, you have everything else. And this here is special. Funk music is just special in comparison to all the other musics, and all of them come together, but the funk music is unique within itself. And I know those things that you're going to donate to us, we will be happily to receive and display.
Out of sight. But, there's then there's wrapping around the unification of all the different organizations from the Memphis Museum. We're being inducted into the African American Music Museum in Nashville, opening up in 2019. We're getting involved with the Funk Museum now, so that everybody talks to everybody, and we create this larger village that breaks down all the different musics, of which they all come from the blues, up through the R&B, through the funk, through everything that represents African American music, and even as it's passed on through hip hop. We just had a sample request today for another one of our songs, which is being used, in a hip hop song, which shows that this funk music just keeps on going on. It keeps living, keeps reinventing itself. Also, I'm very involved in helping artists to fund their own projects through their own income streams. So I'm the funding director at Sound Royalties, which is a new company, much like a private bank for the entertainment industry. And what we do is specialty financing to make a way for creators and their businesses to get money that they couldn't get before. So we're spreading that word and that knowledge. And, we talked a little bit earlier about instruments and books. We have to get involved, wherever we can, wherever we are. My brother and I have a song out now called Houston that we're utilizing as a beacon to raise money for instruments and books for the Houston school district that was torn apart by Hurricane Harvey. And a lot of times we feel like we can't help the world, but you can help, right where you are, as close to where you are, and you can use whatever your talents are to do what you can do. Forget about what somebody else can do. Whether it's you mentoring, whether it's you teaching, whether it's you sharing, or whether it's you partnering with someone else that's raising funds. But all over this world, all over this country, and in every city, the kids, in order to make funk music, they need to have, some instruments. The Fender bass and the Fender guitar. I'm not doing a commercial for them, but that's just to say that the Fender Music Foundation donates instruments. So that's something that I've been involved with as well. So we're just doing what we can in this great time of life. Those are my sunlight.
Well, Reggie, that as we wind this up, you got out of not singing to me or serenading, so I'll just wait because of the time difference. But I'll accept that as an excuse. But okay. I know there will be a time and place that you will have to serenade me. And finally, is there some lasting comment that you would like to make? And I want to say to you, thank you so much for taking your time to come and talk to us on Funk Chronicles. You've given so much history and knowledge on this area, and it's just been fascinating.
Well, I just want to, I want to thank all my fellow funk brothers, because coming up, I had the pleasure of seeing James Brown for 99 cents in Cincinnati, Ohio, many times. I even had the pleasure of seeing him when the legendary Bootsy Collins transitioned to join the band, to watch that changeover, and then to watch him leave and do his own thing. So Bootsy is like my big brother, to be able to sit at the foot and watch cats groove like that, it becomes infectious into your own system and your being. To be able to see the Ohio players perform so close that the horn spit can almost hit you across the face, because you're just standing right there in front of some of the greatest musicians of all time, and to watch that and to feel it, something that cannot be explained to the youth of today coming up. So get there where you can, but then all of the musicians in my hometown, Cincinnati, that showed up for the talent shows, the jam sessions, that made us have a competitive spirit, a competitive edge with compassion and love for each other. That's just really, really exciting. So what a great place to come from. And as they say, keep the funk alive, and we'll see you soon.
Well, make sure you tell Bootsy to continue to reach out and help us down here.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Reggie. This is Rhine McLin, for the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's Funk Chronicles. Until next time, keep it funky.
I've got the Midas touch. Everything I touch turns to gold. All sugar, all sugar. I've got the Midas touch. Baby, let me touch your body and your soul.
Operate that vibe, operate on me. Operate that vibe, make control of me. Operate that vibe, operate on me.
Fell in love on a slow jam, yeah. Play another slow jam. This time make it sweet. A slow jam.
Come on and wind me up.